Good morning, everyone. First of all, big thank you for making it bright and early on Saturday morning. Even though these days it's hard to distinguish Saturday from a Monday, but we have an absolutely fantastic lineup of panelists talking about a very pertinent issue that and will face more and more, which is what is the how will COVID-19 impact the role of women, especially in the economy, especially at workplace. And COVID-19, of course, has been spectacularly unfortunate in a way that it has left nobody on the planet untouched. It is probably the first time ever that pretty much every country in the world is has been impacted by a pandemic in this large way, and we, of course, all of us have been trying to make sense of it at different levels. We are trying to make sense of it at a personal level. There are some kind of simple issues. The one that I'm facing is putting on weight and continuing my exercise. But there are other larger issues like, financial, job security, mental health issues, physical issues. Then we are trying to do this at a social level, at a society level. We are seeing apartment complexes come together as a community in different ways. And lastly, at a national level. And in all of this, one segment of our society, half of our population, has been and will be impacted in a very unique way, and by virtue of the gender they are from, and that is women. We were on track to be a $5 trillion economy by 2024. We had a vibrant, economic startup system. Our startups were beginning to look at markets abroad. Companies like Ola were, entering UK and New Zealand and Australia. And now suddenly with this, we are just seeing massive impacts. We are at a unemployment rate of anywhere from 24 to 27%. Multiple industries have lost lots of jobs. So I think the one issue that we will focus on today is how does that impact women in workplace, and what are the key issues that we need to be thinking about, and what can be done about it. So Priya, this was the longest I will speak in the panel. I will try and speak as little because I want to hear from all of you. So Priya, you have been a very big proponent of bringing women back to work, and you've kind of built a whole category around this whole idea of childcare for women, which is the one big issue that gets women to drop out of workplace. What do you think what are the key issues you think that women professionals will face because of this ongoing COVID-19 pandemic?
And that was great intro. Thanks, Pooja. Just given we have this large women-based workforce ourselves, and within our own parent body, one shift that we've definitely seen is the degree of, as people are, so I would treat it as a pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID sort of approach, right? And I don't think of this as a return back to work. I'm almost thinking of it as a transition back to work. So, people have gotten used to being at home. The initial days were really tough in terms of saying, how do you manage the cooking, cleaning, sorting things around the house, and going through a full day job. But now there is a huge amount of, I think, fear and reticence that is set in, and where the earlier norms in terms of saying women would quit, not only because of the fact that they had to look after children, there was almost a societal expectation that they would need to be the primary caregiver. That protection piece is going to fall back a lot more on these women as they go back into work. So in terms of the fact that how exactly are you going to be able to shelter your child as they go back into childcare centers, right? And the other piece is that given that home burden is pretty significant, we see women themselves and all the issues that you saw 10 years ago or 15 years ago when women were dropping off the workforce, whether it was home related or child related, seem to be resurfacing and getting magnified in today's scenario. So whether it's our own employees or parents who use our centers, I think that is going to be one big piece in terms of how do we ensure that the child is protected and convince people around us. The second piece that will be interesting is this transition back to the workplace. A lot of companies are looking at work from home, right? And they will continue to do so. If there is another wave of the pandemic that takes place, there will be different approaches that are taken. So this, while it's seen as flexibility of work from home versus work from the office, that is going to add it, and there's going to be an added layer of saying how do people cope under the circumstances that they technically have two workplaces, one from home, which is maybe 2 or 3 days in a week, and then they're going into office for specific meetings, and how do they solve for the care conundrum in those situations.
Yeah. Great, yeah. Priya, let me just play a bit of the other side of the picture. I'm seeing people talk about the fact that work from home might actually be good for women. So Padmaja, I'd love for you to weigh in that there is this perspective that now women in meetings, in workplaces, end up bearing the weight of stereotypes, biases, what you're wearing, how you're talking. And given that you're working from home, it will take away some of those kind of biases that stem in because of your face-to-face interaction. How do you think work from home will impact women? Is there a positive side? Is there a negative side to it?
Great question, Pooja. I think like so many other things in life, I think there are both sides to the coin, right? So let me just sort of step back a little bit. Like so many other organizations, I think many organizations have been driving the whole work from home, flexible work for some time, and it's taken root to a different extent. But I think the crisis is really, it had to move. Like in our case, it moved from a 40%. We used to, 40% was there, but we had to move to 100% usually in a few days. Right? I'm sure the number varies. I know others who a higher percentage to 100%. And while there have been challenges with 100% working remote, I think there has also been acceptance that a lot of things that we felt earlier could not get accomplished in this model were possible, right? There is a lot of concern globally as well that the biggest impact of a crisis like this would be on women, minorities. And that is true because in many cases it could depend on access to infrastructure, whether broadband is there, whether the conditions such that you're even comfortable in terms of sharing workspaces. That is true. At the same time, I see, as you said, Pooja, a lot of enhanced opportunity, right? And why do I say that? I think one is there is enough acceptance, as I said, among companies that irrespective of what happens, the whole workplace footprint is going to evolve, right? So many large organizations spoken about, everybody is relooking their footprint, and we may not give up real estate completely, but we will have a hybrid model. Right? So there's acceptance that it works. What does that model mean? It means that the focus again is on the whole. Right? It's, you don't just walk down the hall and see what someone's doing, but it's really about the skills that somebody's doing in the job, the effectiveness, the outcomes, because you're working in a very different way. So I think it's a huge opportunity right? Because when you're looking at this hybrid model, focus is back on best for the job, the meritocracy, and some of the impediments actually are no longer as relevant, like commute time, needing to be, back at a certain time. I think that is very important for organizations to also provide that model, the flexibility of the model, which doesn't expect that, because you're at home, you're just available all the time. But to provide that flexibility to say, structure your day, that applies to everybody, both genders. Structure your day in a manner that makes sense for you, is effective for your, for the business and outcomes. But that being said, I see it as a big opportunity. And I think it's important for us to keep that, because we need it more than ever now. Teams which are diverse are much more effective in these times.
Right. That's a very kind of positive way of looking at it, Padmaja. And I agree with you. There are sets of opportunities, but I think we together will have to work on the impediments that already exist. And Priya talked about one big one, which is childcare. And if you are working from home, then how do you manage childcare? The whole infrastructure of backup care, physical childcare, all of that will become all the more important, and we'll have to invest in that. And the second, so Mithali, I'd like you to weigh in on this. So one impediment is childcare, and the second, I've been hearing from some of my friends, women friends in senior positions, where they'll say, look, because it's work from home, I will see my manager just go in and get comfortable with his coterie of men employees, or people who are reporting to him directly, and she will be the last one to find out what happened. Whereas some of this would become very, very evident when you are in a face-to-face environment, in a work-from-home environment. This whole notion of networking, coffee cooler, water cooler conversations, which play such a huge role in the career progression of anybody, of any professional, that is being changed in some form. So how would you kind of see that, whether as an opportunity or an impediment, Mithali? And are there other impediments that we need to be cognizant of and think about as we try and shape this into an opportunity rather than a big setback?
Sure. For that first, to answer the first part of your question first, I think water coolers have been taken over by WhatsApp groups. So people find their way around, being more courtesy. I don't think that going to change in an instant. I also think it's an organizational decision. It's something you really have to work at consciously to root out. So I would be half and half on that. I just wanted to nuance some of our conversation though in terms of this work from home thing, and just put a couple of data points up for discussion for you. The first point I want to make is that I think we also have to make that large difference between work from home versus unemployment. You made the point about the CMI data. That's just broad brush top of it. It's 26% as an overall number. It is much still depending on states, depending on gender, depending on age. In Jharkhand, for example, the unemployment rate is 47%. 47%. That's a stunning figure. So I also want to understand what the impact of COVID has been for gender in terms of whether people are even given the option of working from home, or whether they have been told we don't need your services. The second point is that I think a large swath of the layoffs actually come from the services sector. So we're talking about travel, tourism, we're also talking about sectors like media, very largely represented by women. There is so I think that is the bigger risk and fear of post-COVID, not so much what happens to the work from home dynamics. And the third point I'd like to put up for discussion, just to tie in with Priya's point, is the fact that globally as well, 70% of our working force is from the informal economy. They have no representation, they have no work from home options, they have not been put on furlough, They haven't been given, in many cases, even some kind of drip income to go by. And I think for many middle and upper income households, these sort of decisions have been taken, saying, now that the woman is working from home, can we cut down, say, the domestic staff that comes in? Can we cut down on things like daycare facilities? So there is the trickle down effect of COVID. And I think that, one layer of it, of course, is what happens in terms of work from home, but there is so much else that's happening, and this is impacting gender in a very disproportionate manner. So I just, wanted to put those thoughts out there.
Absolutely. And, agreed, Mitali. And I've been thinking about this whole idea that women are in a lot of these sectors which are care, nurturing, health-based sectors, which require physical presence. So whether you say, salons, restaurants. So restaurants, I'm hearing figures that 4 out of 10 restaurants might never open. There have been almost, I think I have some data here, which is 2 million out of 7.3 million pre-COVID employees have already lost jobs there. There are other industries like that which are facing these problems. I think education, while we are saying it's been positively impacted and online learning is becoming the norm, even in education, I was surprised to see that almost 4.5 million people have lost jobs out of an 18 million people, because I guess these are a lot of teachers who are teaching face to face, and they're not able to transition to online learning. So absolutely, this pain of joblessness is very real. And there are particular sectors where women are part of the workforce where it gets impacted even more. Sajid, travel, of course, has been that one sector, hospitality, that has been really badly impacted by this, and that doesn't even capture the negativity by this pandemic. What is your view on has there been a differential impact between men and women in the travel sector, and if yes, what are the key issues that we need to think about?
First and foremost, thank you, panel. This is one of the rare panels, where there are more women than men, and this is the way to go, ladies. So keep it up, first and foremost, and thank you for letting me be part of this team. Yes, to address the situation and the issue, as far as the airports are concerned, I don't think, and I'll take it as in segments, please. So if you look at the infrastructure, which is the airports first, we've ensured that there is no disparity per se in either releasing people. First thing, we are not letting anybody go. That's a clear mandate. We stop future recruitments, but we have ensured that we would probably be upskilling, reskilling, and redeploying people. There's no whatsoever loss of jobs as far as we are concerned. That's on one level. Yes, but when you look at the airlines have been going through a major financial crisis anyway, in the country and outside. Most of the airlines were kind of bordering on bankruptcy at any point in time. 40 days to go, 60 days to go had been the scenario in most cases. So they have been adversely hit because of the pandemic. But I'd like to think that the pandemic is actually only the icing on the cake. It was already there to some extent, the financial ill health, and that may now tip the scale. But we'd like to believe that it should not be gender specific. It should be the jobs which become redundant, which need to go. And I don't think it should at any point in time be looked at as sending the women home or sending a particular gender home. That I think is also not really practiced anywhere in most of the corporates, or I'd like to think so. So that's at the second level. At the third level, there is also, I've been hearing some of the ladies speak, the societal pressure, that when things are not safe, why do you need to go? Seems to be the pre-decided question that the so-called decision makers in the family seems to be asking. Now, the decision makers could belong to either gender. So that's something that is the feedback that I've been getting. Incidentally, let me share a little anecdote here with all of you. We'd actually opened a counseling 2-hour session for our employees. because we realized that some of them were going through the stress and not knowing the uncertainties, etc., etc. So we had tied up with an agency who offered 3 to 5 every afternoon. You could dial in and raise your concern, query, talk to a counselor, And at the end of the entire duration of the first month, we realized the more number of participants are ladies, are women. And while we kept it anonymous, we realized that actually the pandemic in many ways has had an adverse impact on the ladies because their so-called work-life balance has kind of been badly impacted. The men still believe that I work from home. So he's still a 9 to 6. Sorry, I'm a man, but I'm saying this honestly.
Yeah.
But because mummy is at home or Didi is at home, between the webinars and other things, they still continue to play both roles. So as employers, we've just discovered something very new and given us that sensitivity to realize that, we need to actually offer more options and flexibility to the lady employees in case we have to retain them and ensure that they're able to continue.
Right.
So it's really too early in the day as far as the travel is concerned to see to what extent will the impact of the gender being asked to leave or to be retained be. But yes, we do expect some loss of livelihood, for want of a better word. And we're only hoping and praying that it stays as a generic term of talent and not for a particular gender.
Thanks, Ajit. I just realized that I forgot to introduce all the panelists in the beginning. So, the next question, if you could just do a quick introduction. But Sajid, I think you raise a very, very kind of, we are kind of moving from this global issue of saying unemployment and work from home trends to saying at a personal level, what are families and individuals facing? I think this is a big kind of underlying trend of this whole idea of mental health, being physical health, just able to keep all these balls in the air as we settle into this new normal that our life has become. So Rashi, it's a good segue to you, given that you work in space. What have been your experiences in the last 2.5 months of this lockdown and this pandemic around how women, the differences between how men are dealing with this versus women, and is there a cause for concern based on gender anywhere?
So I would say yes, there is a cause for concern. Like Sajid also said, that anytime you open up a mental health service, women are the ones who are the primary users. So there is internationally acknowledged the fact that mental health services are used more by women, especially something like counseling and other softer ways of dealing with mental health rather than just medication. So that is one thing definitely. What we are seeing is that while men are reporting more instances of work-life balance in terms of not knowing how to deal with the pressures of working with home or the skill required to work from home, women are more reporting things of, the entire burden of, we've spoken about childcare, we've spoken about, even some women are telling us things like, oh, I have to make tea 5 times a day. And that is coming in between meetings. But also, a lot of women are talking about living in abusive relationships, where violence is going up. Parents, anyway, were against them going for work. Or now, when the men went out to work, was giving them a respite. Now there is no respite because now they're stuck at home in that violent situation. So I think while men are really seeing the impact of the pandemic, women are seeing much more societal effects of people being at home. So while the classes are going on, women have to supervise the class and do the homework, all of that. And the man swoops in and then will just talk to the child for 10 minutes in his break time and walk away. So that's something that we're seeing very often. A lot of women are their depression and anxiety symptoms are resurfacing, something that was being managed earlier. But that again men with anxiety and depression are also showing some resurfacing of symptoms. But again, anxiety and depression is more common in women. So that is an impact that we're seeing also. So it is very, for me, also like, I think we have two men in our team, uh, uh, in a team of around 12. So women naturally seem to be opening up much more to us and stuff. And we always had a work from home option, because we don't believe in sick leaves, because mental health doesn't come with an warning. So we just say, okay, if you feel like doing your sessions from home, go ahead and do it. But what we are missing seems to be the more feminine qualities of community. Eating lunch together, eating. So that's what a lot of my team members have also spoken about. The community part of it, the escaping home part of it, the escaping of traditions that were, women could finally be themselves at the workplace. And that's something that's missing for a lot of women. So I would say working from home has impacted women much more than it has impacted men.
Right, right, absolutely. And Neha, you run jobs for her and focus specifically on placements for women and bringing women back to work again through different kinds of models. So just tell us a little bit about your work and some of the challenges that you saw before the pandemic, and now after this, how have they changed shape or form?
Sure. Thank you, Pooja. And it's been really lovely listening to the other panelists and hearing the different views and perspectives. I'm seeing a lot of this playing out within my own team. I mean, we are a team of 60 people, out of which 85% are women. So I've been definitely seeing a lot of these challenges playing out within the team, and also amongst all the surveys and polls that we've been doing of our women audience. We have about 2 million women, in our reach, and also many of the companies, what they have been sharing, because we've been working with over 7,000 plus companies. So, listening to kind of the challenges that their employees are facing right now and the biases that, do arise between men and women. All that being said, though, I would actually like to put out a contrarian view to this panel, and which is that, frankly, I believe, and all of us at JobServe believe, that this is actually a super opportunity for us to correct the imbalance that currently exists between men and women. Yeah. Frankly, if you study all past big crises that have happened, the women participation in the workforce has actually increased after a crisis, then decreased, because crises like this also make women, they shake up women and make them realize how important it is that every family has a double income, that we don't rely on only one breadwinner in the family, and that the woman also needs to step up in order to make sure that the family can meet all its expenditures. Now, when that happens, a lot of societal change also happens automatically to be able to support that woman's career, so that the family can thrive from the income that she will bring in. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's frankly pure economics. When the family needs that woman's salary, okay, the family will step up, and suddenly you'll find everybody being very supportive towards her career too, including and first and foremost her husband. Yeah, her life partner, which, as Sheryl Sandberg says, make your life partner your partner. And that, once we can kind of cross that divide and like remove gender from household chores and start distributing the workload more equally among different family members, just that shift in society will help hugely in impacting that woman's career. Second, from a company point of view, this whole shift that we're seeing towards work from home is very real. A lot of the companies that we have surveyed have already started, letting go of many of their office spaces, etc., because they are realizing now that this remote working didn't really have that much of an impact on their productivity. And during a time like this, when companies are trying so hard to save on costs, rental cost is a big saving that they can get. So many of them are identifying roles that can permanently be carved into work from home roles, or even roles that can become, for example, freelance or contract roles, so that their fixed cost can decrease. Now, the one thing that we were seeing always before the COVID crisis hit was that a huge number of women take a break in their careers or have not been able to return to the workforce because they're not being able to do a full-time job from the office.
Right.
Suddenly, if there are more options of jobs which are not full-time from an office, you will have more women who will be able to utilize their skills, qualifications, talents, and re-enter the workforce. So that's another second extremely positive trend that will impact women. Third and foremost is that, now that men are also at home and are forced to be at home, they're also realizing this is not an easy job. It's not easy running the home. It's not easy, taking care of all the family needs, etc. And these biases that we have, that that like women are not doing anything, that's also going away. Yeah. So actually, companies are trying very hard to make their environments much more inclusive. And all these are actually positive trends that will overall increase your women participation in the Indian workforce.
So thank you, Neha, for bringing in that contrarian view, and I do think that's a contrarian view. So I will first, I have a question both for Mithali and Rashi. So when I'm trying to make sense of the two perspectives, Mithali, while you were rightly saying that industries with a larger proportion of women have been disproportionately hit by this pandemic, right? And it's a real challenge that we are faced with, which is huge amounts of unemployment. But on the other hand, what Neha is suggesting is that there is an opportunity for us to, for women now, to start the flexibility that women have been seeking in the workforce for decades. That finally might be becoming a reality. How do you kind of bring those two perspectives together, if at all, or do you see that all in all it is still going to be a bad rap that women will face through this?
So first of all, Pooja, I agree with so much of what was pointed out, and I think that is great. It's great to see men have a crying child in the background when they're on phone calls. It's great to see them say, what, can we talk in 20 minutes? I'm just trying to help put my child down for a nap, and there's dishes to do. This is so exhausting. So, you commiserate, but in your head, you're like, welcome to the club, finally.
Right.
So, that's great. I think the first starting point, if at all there is to be this change, though, is wage rationalization. This did not exist before we started this conversation. If that can be the major starting point, I think that would be great. There is no reason that a woman is paid between 20 to 30% less than her male counterpart for doing the exact same work, and sometimes more efficiently, because she's got several other tasks lined up at home.
Yeah.
My problem, though, is the fact that we're now dealing with a smaller pool, and that's really the reality of the situation. There will not be as many jobs available, whichever pocket you look at. More often than not, the problem is the load back at home. So the auto reaction is that the woman takes over the load at home, so that the man holds on to his job. So I think that will be the major sort of thing to navigate, really. And another point I'd just like to make is the fact that sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
Darling, sorry, while you're getting to that, I just want to point out, though, and especially because there are so many women on this panel, yeah, that if we want to change this mindset, it has to start with us. Yeah, the more we perpetuate the fact that the burden of those household responsibilities rest with women, the more we're propagating it. It's time that we change this conversation. Yes. Instead of accepting it, we need to challenge it and we need to overcome it.
Of course, but I think we're talking about a very small and very privileged minority when we
No, Mithali, that's not true actually. Like, think about a domestic staff actually. Think about your maids, right? They have left their families, their kids, and they're working in somebody else's house 24/7. So in fact, if you look at your rural population, your women participation in the rural workforce is much higher than in the urban workforce.
But that doesn't matter because it's not like they get representation for it. They're going into a family pool. All the money earned is, again, for the helps, as I prefer to call them, not maids, domestic staff. Many of them have had to lose their jobs purely because it's the middle to higher income that has sacked them. So there is no job available because
I'm talking about the point of view where we say that there's only a privileged few who can ask their husbands to chip in when it comes to the household work.
I think that is the reality of the situation. It would
Narrative we need to change.
Yeah, it would be great if all of us could call it out, but there's also a reality that exists. So we should, be sort of really honest about that. The other point I'd just like to make, Pooja, when I lost my train of thought, is that how many women are part of these rebuilding conversations? When you look at any, government level or organizational level conversation that's happening, let's talk about, the cash transfer situation that's happening, or whether we're talking to, the health ministry. How many women are present at the table and are part of that conversation? How many women are bringing in reproductive health as part of the conversation of, post lockdown, or as was pointed out earlier, sexual abuse and sexual trauma that exists within the household? So I think that is the other important part of it. A, we're dealing with a smaller pool, and B, are we bringing women and the perspective of women into these conversations, or do we still have five men coming to a table deciding what women ought to do or what not to do?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'd like Rashi to weigh in here. Again, coming back to this, kind of trying to make sense of these two different perspectives, where, on the one hand, we are saying, yes, it is an opportunity for a shift, and that when women begin to earn much more, after a pandemic, it's a necessity for women to work as well and have a double income household. Then men's behavior will shift, or the family will change and will support the woman. How true do you think, Rashi, that is, that kind of cultural shift? Can it be catalyzed so fast by economic issues or monetary issues, or these take generations or long periods of time to come into the system?
So I really believe that in this space, it's up to the men. I don't think it's up to the women to, we talk about snatching the power in the house, but it's really up to the men who have to give power to the women in the households, because women might want to come into the workforce to supplement their double incomes and to make the household much more stronger. But like Mitali was saying, where are the jobs? And if these jobs do exist, what are the protocols in these jobs to safeguard women's interests? And I have seen it through my work. So I used to work in the field of sexual violence earlier before coming into the field of mental health. I've seen that women's jobs are like a pack of cards, right? I mean, the moment something small happens, the first thing that falls is women's jobs. So whether it is, and I've seen it as simple as having street harassment, right? And I don't want to call it simple, but I really think that it's a very small issue because every woman faces it. So we have the tools in our arsenal to kind of deal with it. But the moment the woman complains about it, and that's why we've also seen a lot of women don't complain about sexual harassment at the workplace, because they're like, the moment that comes out, my job is going to go away. So I think that for that change to happen, and we need to have more women, like Mitali was saying, more women at the decision-making power. And I have seen that in my own organization as a leader in the organization. It changes so many things, because when we were talking about leave policy, we said we're going to do menstrual leave as well. And people who we were discussing it, we were like, why do you need to put it out there? And I said, no, it has to find a mention in the leave. Whether somebody takes it or not, I don't care.
Right.
But when I'm defining sick leave, I'm saying you can take this leave for XYZ. And, and that was becoming a huge thing. And paternity leave, that is all becoming such a, what are the messages that we're giving to people through our policies is becoming an important. So when it comes to women, I agree with Neha in the way that this will shift women to kind of want to earn more. And I think at a level we need to, for me, it would be very important if we could have policies that pushed women into entrepreneurship.
Yep.
Existing markets may not, existing organizations might not have space for women, but if we make space for even small entrepreneurs, I think that's where the difference would actually, it would make a whole lot of difference for women.
So this conversation thread is bringing two thoughts to my mind, and Padmaja, Sajid, I'd like you to weigh in. One issue is that of policy. At a policy level, what will need to change in order to turn this big catastrophe into an opportunity or a semblance of an opportunity? And second is, Padmaja, I was just thinking about it. Is there an issue of reskilling here, where so many women are losing their jobs? So do we now need to specifically focus on reskilling? So the two issues of policy and reskilling, or what we can do at a corporate level or at a government level to reduce the impact and the scale of this challenge.
Sure. A very interesting discussion, Pooja, and I think it's just the diversity of the panel that is bringing such diversity of views as well. So I think let me take two parts to this question. One is at the national, societal, governmental level, right, on policy, and very clearly, I like the point that Rashi made a lot about policy around, say, driving entrepreneurship, right? As some of the work that I've done through a platform that I'm part of, Social Venture Partners, we have tried to do work around entrepreneurship. Women, we work. So that's, and as a part of my organization as well, we run a foundation that does a lot of work there. And I think it's something which it requires a lot of investment, but it's also going to take a lot of time to drive changes there. For so many reasons. It could be systemic issue, be societal value. It could just be a lot of limitations in people's minds as well. How much willingness is there to travel far out? So at the government societal level, clearly, I would believe has to be around entrepreneurship. I think even steps like what we did many years ago, say the 6 months of maternity benefits, which is of course only available again for a section one. But steps like that obviously are required to help from just bringing in so many more into the workforce. Actually, our labor participation is very, very important in terms of participation. And I think in the last few years, it's actually come down. I hope this is an opportunity for it to come back, because I do agree to an extent with Neha. I think, many of the watershed moments come after crises, after the Second World War. Married women with children started coming back into the workforce. And hopefully the whole economic imperative. But if I think of from an organizational perspective, I would say 2-3 steps. The first is what I would call the absolute basics, right, for many organizations, which is about, let's say, policies on pay equity, right? This should all be business as usual, and it should be, where you do regular reviews on pay equity, you start looking at governance around, let's say, promotion governance, right? I mean, is there any evidence of bias? So just making sure that a lot of BAU steps are put in place and they're just completely non-negotiable. And you can just focus on it. Second level, I would say, is policies. And, I am personally a proponent. Policies should be gender neutral, because I'm very paranoid about reinforcing stereotypes. So if I have a parent colleague, I would much rather call it out, because I would not want to perpetuate stereotype that, look, I will have leave for mothers and not for fathers. So I personally, I would believe that we should have gender neutral but very supportive, policies, which then mean that you give enough flexibility for people to reprioritize. It could be, 3-day working, 4-day working. It could be a flexible hour working from anywhere, right? So I think that's the second set of policies I would call out. I think third, I believe, through years of, I suppose, just being older than many of you, and just seeing, just having spent time on this in the workplace, in client organizations, I think a lot of focus also has to be on mentoring towards, at the end of the day, all of us are a product of so much of conditioning from the time we were young, right? I believe mentoring help stretch, challenge some of the thinking is very, and definitely most organizations have the resources to do it, and it's so important because change has to start. It has to start. I mean, there has to be a lot of support from the external environment. Completely agree with Mithali that, sometimes I feel blessed. Okay, I come from a privileged, there's so much of support to do what I do, and it's actually a position of privilege. So many people don't. At the same time, I believe and I have seen that it's important to invest in mentoring all the women in the workplace, all men as well, to challenge some of these men bound assumption. It does make
Right, right.
it's three sets of policies in that sense. The absolute BAU, non-negotiable as an organization, cannot tolerate lack of equity in pay, lack of opportunity. Second is more policies which are around support, empathy, and my own bias is always to make them gender neutral, because otherwise I'm always paranoid that I would not be reiterating stereotypes. And third is, I think it's so important to get everyone to decide for themselves what's important.
Right. Sajid, that your organization, would you like to weigh in on what Padmaja suggested? And you already talked about one of the things that you did in your organization, which is to open up a helpline where employees can call as they are going through this this period of transition and change. Are there other policies that you already have and are thinking about that would improve the prospect of this kind of this gender equality at workplace?
Okay, allow me to step back a bit and say something. As employers, we realize that the three most important events that happen in a lady's life, matrimony, maternity, and motherhood, are actually the biggest game changers, both in a positive and a negative way when it comes to a career. Matrimony, obviously, in most cases, and I've seen as an employer, the first and the simplest thing, and ladies, I'm sure you'll echo with me on this, the lady has to shift cities because she's getting married. We've had instances where we've actually managed to get the to-be groom to come and live in Bangalore so the lady doesn't have to shift. Now, these are little things, things that we kind of take for granted.
Yeah.
But believe you me, these are little things that what will probably make a difference.
Absolutely.
As lawyers, we take these for granted. Okay, she's getting married, and look at the boss's approach. She's getting married, she has to go. Maybe at the base level, that mindset needs to be changing to think out of the box and see there's some way where, and of course, you have to remember that the groom needs to agree. We live in India. I mean, so that's one. So these are three primary levels, and as employers, we've realized that it is at these critical moments that we as employers need to be more sensitive and more, therefore, accommodating for lady employees to continue, because there's enough and more societal and family pressures on them to make them from pursuing their career or forcing them to make career a second option. Family is more important. The child needs to be looked after. In order to address this, we've therefore adopted as an organization two specific areas. One is pre-joining. We practice what we call, though it's not a policy, we practice what is called a positive preference. All factors be equal, the preference to be given to the lady candidate. Or in case the only reason she gets overlooked is if there's a specially able person. All right. So that is something as employers that we need to ensure that there is absolutely an opportunity for the ladies to be given a chance, because she's not coming as a quota. She's coming because she's as good as anybody else.
Yeah.
The business will think that, I've been kind of given somebody who I didn't want or was not who I selected. So that's in the pre-joining phase. In the post-joining phase, we are very clear that once an employee enters our organization, they are all part of the talent.
Right.
As a matter of fact, personally, for me, I'd like to believe that the column gender should be removed once an employee has joined an organization.
Yeah.
Because thereafter, it's only your delivery, what you've proven to the organization and your contribution, which should take you up the ladder. Yeah, so these are things that we've consciously contributed. As a matter of fact, allow me to say this, that we boast of the first firefighting unit in Asia, which is primarily manned by lady firefighters. in Bangalore, so I think we're trying to go that way.
Yeah.
So I think those are the few things.
Great. Priya, you had a reaction to that.
With both, what Padmaja said as well as what Sajid said, just like we have different generations of employees, we have, millennials, Gen X, Gen Y, their needs are different. I think acknowledging the fact that the needs of women are slightly different. And, while I appreciate the fact that, a gender should not exist post being inducted into an organization, the reality is that my, duties at home towards society, whether it's an aging father-in-law, whether it's my young children, school going, etc., does fall on me, right? So from that perspective, I think calling it out and saying that the needs of women are different and they are valued as a part of the workforce is really critical. But creating specific policies to support that is very, very important, and not trying to ignore the fact that the needs are different. And just like generations of employees, I think that the needs for women are different. And we have to make policies, procedures, support structures which allow them to function in an equitable way as compared to men in the organization. I really also want to call out through the fact that, mentoring, role modeling, men within the organization acknowledging that they need to head out for a PTM or, that they need to go out for something. Those are also really positive messages to send in an organization saying, I am an equitable part of the family. And like Neha was making the point saying, it is a two-way thing, not being diffident about the fact that this is a priority. And I am at the family stage of my life. And whether I'm a man or a woman, I contribute equally. I think both those, understanding that family is a unique stage for both genders and that the needs for women are slightly different is the only sort of additional point I would
Right. So, Priya, that reminds me of that reminds me, just one sec, Padmaja. Go ahead. So
I just
that
like to point about role modeling, right? So I think maybe I also see the glass always half full, but I'm really my team who've taken time off to care for a young child, right? Women very ambitious. I mean, obviously it happens both ways, but very ambitious, come back from maternity, say, I want to, how do I do? And I think to me, both are role models. And it shows that, I would love to call out, and we do call out our male leaders. One of the first people who took this work in a big way was a very senior male leader, and we called it out in a big way and celebrated it. So I think role modeling, showing that, look, it doesn't have to be only one way, is actually a very powerful message, and all organizations need to try that. Back to you.
Yeah, I was reminded of an anecdote. Priya's company, Clay, acquired my company, IntelliTalks. This was, I think, 3 years ago. And I remember we were in the midst of negotiation, and we were negotiating the term sheets and the terms of the deal. And we were talking at 7:30 in the morning. She WhatsApped me saying, can we talk? And we were talking 7:30 in the morning. I was just trying to send my kid to school, and I could hear utensils in the background. And Priya says, Pooja, don't mind, I'm just washing the utensils right now. So for me, it was just this moment where, I had been working for 20 years until that time across different geographies, and never had that happen that, in an important deal, you are kind of taking care of housework at the same time. But what I realized was we women do that all the time. And that's like part of our life. And to Priya's point, it just needs to be acknowledged. And maybe this is the moment when it will get acknowledged, because men and the rest of the members of the family are seeing it firsthand, what it means to work and take care of the family at the same time. So, we are at the end of the hour.
Yeah,
I just have so many. Yes, Neha, I'm coming to you to close, because I wanted to get your perspective as you close, because you were the most positive about it, and we would like to close on that note. Just before that, if any of the participants have any questions for the panelists, please put it in the chat window and we'll try and address it in the next 15 minutes. So coming back to you, Neha, Sajid talked about some of the things that they have done at their organization. One, closing remarks, and two, how are you seeing other companies kind of incorporate these change in policies in the way they deal with their workforce?
Yeah, great, Pooja. And Sajid, it was really lovely to hear about the efforts that BIL is putting in to ensure that you have more women in. And I love the firefighting story. I mean, that's something that I'm definitely going to get back to you and try to put it out there. Because like Padmaja said, I think this is the kind of role modeling that we need to showcase. Yeah, both from a women point of view, family point of view, society point of view, and companies point of view. And I mean, frankly, I really see a huge tidal shift happening. And I never meant to say that it will happen this year or it will happen this quarter. It will take a whole generation for that shift to happen. But the shift has begun. Yeah. And it is up to each one of us to ensure that we move that towards the positive direction when it comes to more women in the workplace. And it's up to each one of us to actually change that narrative. Yeah. And I just wanted to add one of my favorite quotes of Ayn Rand. In again, in a contrarian to the whole snatching responsibility versus waiting for men to give us that power. So Ayn Rand says that, it's not about who will let me, it's about who will stop me, who can stop me. And I think that's what we need to start thinking about when it comes to a woman's stand in this whole economic situation. Yeah, we're not the Abla Naris of the yesterday. If we want the situation to change, we got to take the bull by its horns and start making the change slowly, surely, but clearly in that direction. And from a company point of view, I mean, we see companies on a huge spectrum. The large multinational companies are working very hard to increase the number of women in the workforce, specifically because it impacts the bottom lines. Yeah, because they see the difference that diversity makes in terms of increasing their ROIs. We are also seeing a lot of now SME startups and Indian companies also moving that direction, but change is slow, steady, but sure.
Thank you, Neha. So, Janani, if there are any other questions from other attendees, please do let me know. I'll put it on the chat window. But I really think we'll need a follow-up session to this because there are just so many questions still that remain unanswered, and you feel like we just scratched the surface of this very big issue. Janani, are there any other questions? Let me see if there are any others.
Sorry, Pooja, I was talking on mute. I had a question itself and it's on chat. I don't know if you can read it. My question was more for Mithali. With India, the expected push on local products, what role do you think women will play? Is there a big chance for more rural women to get more mainstream with art and craft? Expected to get more focus going forward.
Thank you for that, Janani. I just want to sort of separate first the terminology from the point that you're making, because I know the phrase that was put out was vocal for local. But if you just take a step back, you have to understand what it is that we are really dependent, externally on. One is oil. That's not going to change. That's a big part of, what our trade is with oil importing countries. The other is defense, which will take us some time, really get our own thing going with. The other is finance and capital, actually, which is markets like the Americas, Canada. Again, not something that's going to change overnight. And then there's technology and R&D, or the back end of health and pharma, for which we do look to our neighbors like China. Now, these are very large pockets in terms of what our core dependence is. Stripped of that, you come down to the smaller, community level things that you're pointing out, which is, local products, whether it's rural or whether it's women, who can start a small entrepreneurship for themselves from home. I think there's great opportunity. I think the bigger, sort of plug-in over there generally is what we do with finance and how we help women access that money. We have to make loans smaller. We have to make them easier. We have to also make the rules of the game in terms of returning that money easier for them. And the one most important point, actually, I think, which we didn't get to, talk about is this: we have to make so much accessible to these women via their phones. That I think, second to a bank account, has been one of the greatest liberators for women. And that's how we need to sort of structure things to make it easier for them to access even a chota, small, they can start doing things. I think that's where the push for local will come. And that frankly can start with all of us. Go out there, support a woman who makes great pickles and say, you know what, I got your back for 2 months. You take this 20,000, you do what you want with it, and then we'll figure out how to return it. So that's my bit on it.
So I think, sorry, I just wanted to come in and say that's exactly what I also truly believe in terms of changing the game, even in mental health. Because we always had a 80% online services kind of model, because a lot of the people who are accessing our services just don't even want to deal with the Bangalore traffic. So even though the therapist and the client is sitting in Bangalore, nobody wants to travel, and we've always made it accessible. But just putting our services also available on chat has changed the system for women, because they can chat from home. Mental health services don't need to shift. They can still access therapy. The other thing also is the price point, like you very rightly said. So we do something called as pay what you want. So though our regular fees is around 1,500, we offer services for people who can't afford it at around 300. And just the flexibility that it's no questions asked. So we have women who this month will pay 300 because they don't want to discuss it with family, but next month will pay us the full fees. And there's no shame associated with that. And that has changed. So these entire things of, when we make, and this is my obviously opinion, that when we make gender neutral suggestions, it still sometimes goes in the favor of the man, because you're taking an average or you're doing the median, which goes into the favor of man. But when you actually sit down and discuss with women and see the issues that women are facing and making policies very specifically for gender, and similarly, I think these kind of policies need to go for every marginalized group, not just women. So we have a different policy for queer people, then have a different policy for people with disabilities, and then include these disabilities as psychosocial disabilities as well. So to be inclusive on multiple levels is, I think, and this we have only noticed because we've hired people. So we have a trans person in our team, we have a couple of queer people in our team, we have Muslim women in our team, and that only we can only cater to those populations once we make our hiring more diverse in that way.
Absolutely, yeah. I think absolutely right point on that, Mithali, that we actually this whole piece of entrepreneurship we've not touched upon in a big way, because I can personally say that during these 2.5 months, I was ordering food and pickle and all from women-owned small businesses that have really structured themselves now for payment, accepting payments, accepting orders, delivering orders. And so that for me was a real big silver lining. And I was kind of thought about how we could use this as an opportunity to promote women entrepreneurship and finally make capital. If capital we can make available, they can go to the next level of scale with some of these businesses. So great. Well, thank you very much. It was just fantastic hearing all the different kinds of views. I think we can all agree that this is a massive shift. There are multiple issues at hand. There is the big issue is that of unemployment. We are seeing massive unemployment for women just by virtue of the fact that they've been employed in industries which have been disproportionately hit. So we need to be cognizant of that and see how we can, we can address that at a policy level, at a reskilling level, at a personal level by supporting individual women entrepreneurs, workers, women in the community. And then second part is, there are just many trends at work right now, which is mental health is one. And I think there is just no doubt in our minds that women have been affected by it. So just at an individual level, we need to be cognizant of that. Women around us, if we can even give a listening ear in some cases, or make them available of services like Rashi's, and there are many other services that are coming up, so that there is a venting mechanism for what they are facing. The third is the big cultural shift that we are talking about, which is work from home becoming a reality, and how does that balance out the gender roles, just because by virtue of exposure to what it means to balance and juggle multiple balls in the air, which men are getting to see, and how we at individual levels, we at decision making levels in our organizations can continue to drive that shift in a positive direction. So thank you so much for your time on Saturday morning. And Janani, we do need follow-up discussion on this, because there are still a lot of issues that we still need to thrash out here.
Thanks, Pooja.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.